Hello, YouTube fans. Nice to see you here again. Sorry it's been about a week's time. Had a lot going on this past week with a bunch of concerts between the Horror Punks USA shows and Raul and the Duke shows. Also just had a lot going on in my life lately, so just trying to get some things going, but I'm here now for all you Journey fans and album review fans out there, or just fans of my work in general. Here to review Journey's Frontiers, if I can get the glare to get off of there. A couple things I want to drop in before I start talking about this album today. Try to get through this quickly. Is just basically talking about how I set up a Patreon and my FIVERR. Well, I always had a FIVERR, but I set it up more professionally now. So I will drop the links below to my Patreon and my FIVERR in case anybody wants to support me financially there. And I would love to create content for anybody. Through my Patreon especially, I'll be taking special requests, like if anybody wants me to cover a song, do a guitar lesson or something, to review a specific album, review their stuff, get custom created merch through Patreon, all that stuff. It'd be cool stuff, and I really need the financial support at the time to make this stuff happen for you, make the music happen, so it would be very appreciated if anyone wanted to support. And on FIVERR, all kinds of tasks that I can set up on there. Currently I have a task for me to do lead guitar work for you, mainly guitar solos, and then also to be a ghostwriter and write lyrics and that sort of thing for pretty much any song in any genre you'd like. So if you want me to help you out and you want to help me out and scratch each other's backs, that would be cool. I really appreciate it. Without further ado though, we will get into this album review. So the album in question today is, like I said, Frontiers by Journey. And I know for a lot of Journey diehards, this will probably come as a bit of a surprise and maybe seem a little sacrilegious, but this is my favorite album of theirs, like studio album, period. It is a hard toss-up, because I really like Raised on Radio, the way that sounds, and I also really like Infinity. And that's nothing to say anything else about like their other albums. Obviously, Departures, Escape, everything in between, it's all really good stuff. Don't get me wrong, I love Journey. I even love the new stuff with their new singer. They're never not going to be an interesting band to me because everyone's just so musically diverse and talented and comes from such a great and interesting background. But yeah, I mean, I didn't really know how panned this album was till getting into this and reading reviews on it, but yeah, it seems like a lot of people either really, really love and obsess over this album, or they can't stand it in comparison to the others because it's just such a shift. Now, with that being said, go over a couple of the details on the album. It was released in February 1983, so right at the beginning of the 80s there, but it was recorded throughout 62 in Fantasy Studios in Berkeley, California, which the band's a Cali band, so that's pretty much a no-brainer there. It was produced by the amazing, the legendary Bob Ludwig, which, geez, what didn't he do from like the late 70s through the 80s and early 90s and stuff? He was just over every band, every big band, especially when it came to like arena rock and hard rock, heavy metal. Alright, so yeah, had quite some chart success with this one, and we're gonna get right into it because there's a lot to unpack with the different songs here. So getting into the track by track review here, we're gonna start with obviously the opening song, Separate Ways, Worlds Apart. If you ever seen the movie Yes Man, you know, as soon as you pop this album on, it basically feels like you're just starting that movie, because that movie also starts with Separate Ways, and it's just become an iconic song. I mean, as a teenager when I was first starting to get into hard rock and heavy metal music, like all the classics, this song was like constantly on VH1 Classic rotation. And I always loved the video and stuff. Always thought it was very unusual for Journey. And as soon as I heard the song the first time, even before seeing it on anything, like I just started discovering it through YouTube recommendations, and like when about the time I was like 15, 16, and it was a song. As much as I love Journey and all their other stuff, as soon as I heard this, it just blew my mind because I was hearing that they were kind of influential to like the whole hair metal thing and power metal, hard rock kind of scene. And I didn't get it with songs, like "Don't Stop Believin'," "Any Way You Want It," and stuff like that. Like the bigger hits. As soon as I heard "Separate Ways," like I was like, oh, I was like, okay, so there's definitely a lot more to offer with this band. This is like the heaviest thing I'd ever heard from them. One of the heaviest songs still, I think, like of that era and of that genre. So, getting into it, it opens up with that iconic synth intro. The doom 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 boom boom. Like it's just, sounds so cool, so futuristic sounding. Comes in with them heavy metal guitars and the thumping drums. How I love the guitar riff in this. So simple. They're just strumming, that open E chord, but the way they add them natural harmonics in there, just on them accents, it's so cool, so fun. I love playing this song. Probably one of the first Journey songs I ever learned how to play on guitar. I always loved Steve Perry's desperate delivery over the heaviness of the verse. Like, the verse is so thumping and heavy, but him and the synths kind of complement each other here. Like, the synths lay over them chords and them icy chords, and he just kind of, like, has this own... He does this with a lot of songs, just has this floating vocal melody. He just picks it out of thin air, and it sounds so... It has so much desperation in it here. And the mix of the backing vocals complement each other nicely. It just all meshes together here. It's unreal. Immediately establishes the video game-esque sort of dystopian vibe that's felt throughout the album. And I know that's sort of like a turn-off for some of the fans, like I was reading. Like they try to compare it to the early stuff, and I think you just kind of gotta suspend all your prior beliefs of them up to this point, especially because I was actually managed to find a couple interviews from around this time, and watching like their backstage, and I think they called it Frontiers and Beyond or something. It was a little documentary they had along with a couple interviews from 1983. They're just talking about how groundbreaking doing this album and this tour was, and looking back, I mean, it really was. I'm not sure if they really were the first people to do these things that they were talking about, but apparently they were the first band to tour with like a 5 video camera setup, like to record all of their concerts and to like show them over the big prompters there. And they also had a video game made for them at this time. For the Frontiers album, which apparently they were the first band to ever have a video game. Granted, it was like an 8-bit arcade game, but for the time, and when you listen to the music on this album, you totally get it. You totally get how it all connects with that vibe. It's just amazing. They were the first to do so many new things in the 80s on this, and you can really feel that with these vibes that they bring to the table on here. I feel like they were purposely trying to go for more like futuristic dystopian sound and still hone in those emotional Journey cliches, if you will. And the song, it kind of sounds like a breakup song, but you're still holding on to that person in your heart and wish the best for them. That's how I feel. Also, like when you're like an ex-lover finds a new lover, you know what I mean, and you just know it's not the right person for them. It just sounds like one of those kind of deals. It's probably a song about dealing with relationships on the road. I mean, especially of a romantic relationship, but you could look at it in many different ways, I suppose. And I know that they were going real hard around this time, from like Escape, up through like to the end of the 80s. They were like one of the biggest selling like touring acts of like all time. Probably still holds some records in certain areas there. It's a very tasteful yet shreddy solo that comes in. I've always loved this one. Like it has a lot of the main melody in it, but he just it sounds so metal for him. Like it really does. It just sounds like some 80s heavy metal stuff that when I first heard it really didn't expect from Journey. I can tell you that. And then it goes into that breakdown, and God, that's like the best part of the song, really, where the synth line just kicks in, and it comes in with that creepy, like, alien-sounding synth over top of it. But really, the best part here is the drums. Now the drums just kind of fill in. There's like, boo, doo, 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 doo. Like it just, they just come in with these little accents and fills, and it's so nice. Pumping right back in, with that guitar squeal that leads back into the final chorus, and yeah, it just gets more and more intense with his vocals as it gets to the end of the song. Next track, one of my favorite Journey songs for sure, especially as far as their like emotional songs and ballads. Send Her My Love. I love how spacey, before the song even comes in, it comes in all spacey. It just fades in with this like ambient texture, and then it establishes like the R&B type of groove atop of that otherworldly melody that's going on the production of this song and most of this album. It just puts you in another place. I love it. Love stuff like that. Everything is layered so beautifully in this song. His vocals are beautiful into the chorus. I love the jazzy chords that come out of the chorus too. They're just like these little stops and just, different chords. I haven't learned how to play the song, so I don't know exactly what it is off the top of my head, but I will learn this one. The bridge vocal leading into the guitar solo is so smooth, and the solo sucks you right in. It's got such an infectious melody. It's so nice. Then when the vocals complement it, it just soars with another otherworldly melody. Like he just comes in with the "Send her my love," and it just gets so eerie there. I love it. It just gives goosebumps. Some of the solos on this album just really give me goosebumps every time I hear it. It's crazy. And the outro lick, when it's fading out, it really reminds me of some stuff that like David Gilmour of Pink Floyd would do into the 80s on stuff like Momentary Lapse of Reason, and then even into the Division Bell in the 90s and stuff. Some of his solo work, like the guitar tone coming out of this song, it just gives me those later Pink Floyd vibes. I love it. Very chilling. The next song, Chain Reaction, kicks off heavy right off the bat with the pounding beat and the chugging guitars. This album is probably one of their heaviest by far in general, as synth and like new wave laden as it is. There's a couple songs on here that you're just like are head scratchers for them, and you're just like, wow, they can do that? Like, yeah, because they're that good. I love the overlaying chord progression. It just comes in with them vamping, more video game-esque vibes there. This one has a nice interplay with the vocals from the rest of the band and Steve during the verse. Like they're all kind of going back and forth. It's a really nice touch for them. The chorus is so catchy too. Chain Reaction. Always has me grooving. And once again, the backups are so well layered in during that chorus. Like they're, it just sounds so like I hate to say robotic, but I don't mean that in like a bad way. It's so meshed together, and like they're just filling it all up nicely. A very nice chord being presented in their harmonies there. And the diminished chords and changes during the chorus are cool too with the riff. Some stuff you don't usually hear with them. Definitely very heavy metal and hard rock inspired. There's so much power and energy to Steve during the second verse. Like most of these songs, he'll start off with this, just kind of leading you in with the first verse, and then the second verse, he just kind of, boom, ups the ante and like fluctuates things in his melody. It's great. He does that on almost every song on this album, and God, I couldn't ask for more. And it's just another one of those like 80s new wave meets power metal. like kind of things that they were doing at this time anyway, because obviously they're not very known for that sort of thing. The keyboard interlude is otherworldly, and it's a nice characteristic that adds to the song. Awesome chord changes that happen there. Then it drops out in the middle with just the guitar riff coming back in, and him coming in with a no, no, and the drums just start steadily coming in like pistons pumping back into the chorus. Sounds like the lyrics are about success and how that can catch like wildfire, but you have to watch out for how certain chain reactions take place in there. Not sure exactly what in specific this refers to, or a lot of the songs specific on here. Just not really aware of like where they're coming from. Like I've seen their documentary and I understand some of the context around this area, but yeah, lyrically, I can't say that I know exactly what they were writing about for sure. The final guitar solo that leads this out though is awesome. Just a short little thing that trails off at the end. On to my favorite song on the album, my favorite Journey song. I don't want to say by far, because there's definitely some close contenders, and it's hard to say that this is my absolute favorite, but it really is. I don't think many songs take me to the place that this one does. Definitely my favorite Journey song, After the Fall. It immediately opens with that beautiful main melody, the da-na-na-na-na-na. It's just so spacey, and it's just lovely. The verse drops into the bass-driven progression, just dumping with that. It's just nice, nice little R&B groove on this, and I love how Neil's guitar just kind of like creeps in with those like little feedback and swelling things, and he finally comes in with the chugging on there. And for me, a lot of songs that Journey writes can do this, but this song is definitely one of the most like tear-jerking for me. I don't know what it is, just some songs get to me like that. Especially as soon as his vocals come in, I just feel the melancholy and the somberness of this song. It's just really touching, you know. It's a deep and brooding and yet again otherworldly. I say that a lot during this album because I think that's really what they were meticulously going for here, is just creating a vision quest, you know, no pun intended for them, because obviously that was a thing they were involved in. But I think they were a band that was really good with painting pictures in your head, no matter like how vague and what that means. Like they really were great at that. And this song is the best example on this album, in my opinion. The harmonies in the chorus are freaking beautiful, as they are through most of these songs. It's such a moody vibe with those riffs and stuff going on in there too. The second verse is just so much more emotional in the vocals again. He just completely fluctuates the melody again into a more soaring pattern. The vocal ascending, then falling into the guitar solo after that is really cool too. Like, he does it a couple times, we'll go all the way up, and he starts to tease you into the solo, and then he finally does it a couple more times, and the final, like, fall, like he just, oh my god, just like descends into it, and then the guitar solo, man. Definitely my favorite Neil guitar solo. It's just so beautiful. It just got all them like half bends in there, and they're just so tasty, so bluesy. It's great. It just sucks you in for a ride, and it doesn't last very long towards the end of the song, but god, it just, you know, when it goes, you just never want it to be over, you know? It's one of those songs. Couldn't say enough about how much I love After the Fall. I think it's so underrated, and I wish they whipped it out more throughout their sets. Now moving on to the next song, probably the most classic. Now some would argue that probably in statistics, only because Separate Ways peaked at number 8 on the charts, technically higher than this next song, Faithfully, peaked at 12. Still not bad in comparison, but in my opinion, especially compared to what I've heard from other Journey fans and just people who have been around the music longer than I had been, Faithfully was a song that it seems to me to be more important than Separate Ways, like in their hits and everything. Definitely touched people more. I obviously prefer something like Separate Ways more just because it seems to be more groundbreaking and Faithfully is a little more predictable for them, but yeah, can't stress how important this song is to like music in general. It opens with that classic piano intro, so beautiful. The chords are beautiful. Then once again, Steve's vocals come in very beautifully too. Ah, so nice. It's another tear-jerking song that you almost like can't help but feel emotional listening to, especially relating to it like I can. It's another song that's about being in a band and the relationships dealt with while being on the road, especially with your family. I mean, obviously, I think that's a very shallow representation of the song, but I think it's one of those songs that has a lot of surface value in it like that. I love Neil's licks creeping in slowly into the background during the first verse, just adding them little touching things like he does. Um, Probably the most classic, and I say that with quotations, classic sounding Journey song on the album, albeit still with some synth layers added in here and there for sure. It gives it a little bit of a different touch than some of their other albums. I love the line that comes in towards the middle of the song. He says, "Through space and time, always another show, wondering where I am, lost without you." That one always gets to me the most in the song. I just really feel it there for some reason in that line. Uh, yeah, it tells a beautiful love story, however sad it may be, because it's always redeeming in the end. You know, it always moves to that motivational area, as do most of their songs. They never let any of the vibes, however depressing or desperate they have in their songs, like weigh it down, and it always comes back up very uplifting. Oh, love the way that they do that. They really play on your emotions well. And then I love the arpeggiated synth that comes in into the outro, and the drums kind of just fill in coming up into that. But yeah, the arpeggiated line that comes in, that so nice and different for them, and for this like ballad, it really fits it well. And then it goes into the whoa-ohs that come in out of that arpeggiated line, which everyone uses the whoa and somewhere, you know, the chanty lyrics, but this is one of the most powerful that it's ever been done and tasteful. It's just classic, you know, and it's not like it lasts long either because it leads right into the guitar solo, basically emulating those notes and then soaring off into its own world in the ending solo. He just gets more intense, and you know, Steve just builds upon that and gets so high, some of the highest notes he's ever hit. And faithfully, just it's so fucking high. I love it. They're just all pouring their freaking hearts out, understandably so, into this song. I can't say enough about Faithfully. Sure, it might be a little overrated in their catalog, but it really stands out on this album. And moving on to the next song, Edge of the Blade. Now, this is in my opinion, probably their heaviest song. Like, they have a couple moments on albums previous to this, maybe not many more coming after it until we get into later years, but Edge of the Blade is definitely their heaviest song up to this point. It opens with one of the most metal Journey riffs right off the bat, just very dystopian once again. The drums come in very powerful too. It just really sounds like they were listening to like Somewhere in Time, Iron Maiden. Actually, I don't think that even came out. Maybe they more and so inspired that, but it sounds like they were listening to that kind of stuff, like sort of power metal, new wave British heavy metal stuff, along with the new wave that was coming out around the time, giving it that icy cold textures. But it really sounds like Maiden or Judas Priest or some of those things to me. Just nice. I love the very video gamey feel with the riff. Once again, layered with spacey synths that complement it and make it very unique. His vocals are very intense and in your face with some urgency on this one. It sounds like a warning for being on the edge of losing your mind and who you are, and just losing it to corruption and stuff based upon a lot of the previous mentioned things like being successful and just being a musician and becoming famous and stuff. It's definitely one of their darkest songs lyrically, however heavy and like kind of driving it may be. The solo is so metal too, like it just goes off and just so tasty and so fast. He's shredding so hard into the main melody. And then Steve comes in again, and it all soars off into the ending. Like a lot of these songs on here, he just keeps soaring and soaring. And probably the solo where Neil kind of goes off in his own world the most, and he kind of shows off some of his shreddy features that he's not as known for, because he's a very soulful, just tasty guitar player, but can't express enough how just so fluid and just tight his playing is. I love it, and everything he does. And then we're moving into the next song, Trouble Child. I love how the wailing guitars matched with the arpeggiated chords, like the clean / acoustic. I don't know if it was actually acoustic they used here, because a lot of the clean 80s guitar sounds acoustic, but it could just be compressed with a bunch of chorus or something on it. This one sounds very Van Halen-esque, from 1984 sort of era for them, maybe even to Van Hagar era. Probably inspired some of that. It's another desperate sounding vocal delivery from the verse into the pre-chorus. I love the clean guitar arpeggiated going into the first chorus, it just kind of just like some finger-picked riff there. The rhythm during the chorus is very odd, definitely one of the most jerking rhythms there. It's a straightforward count, but they're the drums are just kind of doing their own thing with the riff there, and it's really cool to hear them do that, because they usually don't have that sort of interplay with the guitar riff and the drums like that. It sounds like an introspective song about dealing with inner struggles. I love the interplay between both guitars, leading from the bridge into the solo, where Neil once again delivers a soulful yet shreddy solo in this one. It's tasteful, but he's also going off. I love that. He does that a lot on this album. The song closes out with the intro, essentially. It just kind of fades that back in, and it, closes out the same way that it opened. The next song, Back Talk. Definitely one of the more unique standouts on this album. It comes in right with the drums only, and it comes in with that sort of 80s gated, but yet Bo Diddley kind of sounding beat, because it has the dun 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 dun, but it also changes it up quite a bit. He adds a couple more eighth notes and triplets into there here and there to kind of spice it up a little bit, but essentially it does have that same bum 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 Bo Diddley kind of rhythm going on there. And the guitars and vocals come in to the verse with such attitude. It's not the heaviest song they have, but it has some of the heaviest delivery, and it just sounds like he's having fun with the delivery there. Not trying to knock on him. It sounds like he was kind of sick during this song or something, his something about his vocal cords are weakened or something, but he's still realizing that this song is just a catchy, fun song and kind of meant to be in your face like that. So yeah, I love the kind of rasp that he's getting out of this. It sounds like a blues rock song essentially, especially with that beat, but done with all these 80s tricks on it and everything. So that's really neat to hear, because throughout the 80s I feel like the blues was a dying things. So to hear like any of those like touches brought into it, especially with a band like them, even though they started out having the sort of like bluesy, soulful stuff, and especially on their first couple albums. Yeah, it's just really cool to hear at this point in their career them doing something like that. Neil comes in with the solo, just guns a-blazing. He just freaking rips your head off. And then I love the call and response with his licks. Like, they just have, like, these stop things, and he's just kind of, like, holding out the bends and then just descending into it. It's really nice. And then he just rips into, like, some of his most, like, lightning speed riffs and licks that I've ever heard him do. Like, oh my god. First time I heard this album, the lead guitar playing on it, as much as I was already a fan of Neil Sean's work, yeah, this stuff fucking just ripped my head off of my shoulders. I was just like, oh god. I was like, I had no idea he could be that, like, in your face, you know? Like, I just always associated his playing with having very infectious hooks and melodies, but yeah, he's just like, you know, just goddamn, just going the fuck off, like a lot of 80s guitar players could. It also has one of the few classic Journey vibes felt here, similar to like early albums. Even though it has that 80s sound to it, it kind of reminds me of some of the songs you would find on Departure or Infinity. Just with the bluesy kind of vibe to it and just kind of playfulness of the song. You know, it just brings me back to those albums. And then the song just ends abruptly. It's just kind of just bam, done, and it's so fun like that. It's just such a fun song. Into the next song, the title track, Frontiers. God, you know, just the end of this song just kind of like fades out into this other world here. Like, Backtalk totally does not prepare you for how the album is going to end. So it immediately takes you into another world. The synth leads that come in remind me of something like some song that reminds me of something from like Super Mario 64. Don't know why. Obviously, I've said some of the songs on here give me that dystopian sort of futuristic video game sort of sound, but like this song, it just reminds me of something particular to that game. Don't know what it is, can't really remember. But yeah, just with those do 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 do, it's just so weird, so different for them, really for anybody. I mean, really sounds like some like Tears for Fears, like kind of esque stuff thrown in there. The percussion and added effects in this are done very well, and they're very interesting too. Like, it's got all these different noises and futuristic-esque sounds coming in throughout his vocals and the verses and everything. You really get that feeling that Journey is taking things to another level at this point in their career. Sounds like they're just breaking the norms and trying to change the world of music and experimenting with more progressive ideas, like in the lyrics of this song and just the way it sounds in general, and the whole album, really. It has more of that urgent and desperate vocal delivery, too, from Steve, and he doubles up his vocals in a sort of battle towards the end, like they're just kind of like battling with that, we all need new frontiers, like they're just all like complimenting, and then finally, like, they just keep colliding, and then they come together in the final one of the song where it just closes out, the song drops out, and it's just left with that a cappella of him, and it just so jarring. It's nice. Really, really powerful and cool. Into the last song on the album, unfortunately, it's an album that leaves you wanting more, and apparently it had more added onto it with, Ask the Lonely and Only the Young, which for some reason were scrapped, but luckily were later used in like soundtracks and box sets and greatest hits and stuff. So yeah, especially Only the Young. I really like that song. It's a shame that was cut from this. Anyway, moving into the last track here, Rubicon, which I think is like a reference to the Rubicon River in Italy. That's what I want to say. I feel like it might have some other meaning to it, but I feel like it really is supposed to have that sort of just classical kind of vibe, but also futuristic and progressive at the same time. Not really sure how to describe this. It does open with those awesome guitar strums that are sort of on the offbeat of the song, Like, it doesn't make sense when you first hear it, as powerful it is. It just comes in with that da-dun, 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 da-dun. Like, and you're just kind of like, what the hell kind of rhythm was that? And then the drums come in, and it's just kind of like, you know what I mean? It just kind of leaves the driving melody while everything else is doing that bouncing sort of upbeat rhythm. It's really cool. Very unique sounding stuff. The drums really come in and make sense of it until the verse comes in. And then I love the spacey layers of the chords, again, with the synth and the guitar progression going on here. Very upbeat here, even with the vocals. This is probably one of the most uplifting songs on the album. The chorus just thumps, like just keeps that pounding beat going on. And then his vocal melody laid over top of it, like many other songs, is just so catchy. Just really drives it home. I love how the line trailing off with the vocals out of that first chorus just comes out too. It just has a nice trailing echo, and yeah, just cross-fading techniques and that sort of thing. It still has a sort of modern and video gamey sound too. It definitely doesn't differentiate from anything else on the album. The second chorus vocals just soar into the solo, where he delivers yet another, like, Eddie Van Halen, like, kind of reminiscent solo. I don't really want to compare him to anybody else, because really Neil is just a outstanding guitar player in his own right and has character, but I feel like they were all kind of being like, how can we top Van Halen right now? Like, really, with the solos. And then I love how the delay complements the solo in this one, too. This album doesn't have a lot of his, like, really effects-laden solos on it, but this delay in this one here is a really nice touch. I really love his soulful bends, and they really ascend into the ether on this song. Going into the final chorus, where those final vocals have some more awesome effects trailing off into it. Just really spacey kind of stuff. Solo motif is again reprised in the outro's main riff. Like, it just kind of like harkens it back in, and it just marches out with that da-dun, 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 da-dun riff, like, going into it, and just keeps you trailing on into these new frontiers, so to speak. And I really feel like it's a good closer for the album, as much as it leaves you just wanting more, and it just makes you want to loop it back over again. All my favorite albums are pretty much like that. Like, from start to finish, you're just like, man, I really don't want this to stop. You know, like, it's just a journey. So, yeah, that was the track-by-track review. We'll go into, you know, kind of going over the rating of the album score-wise here. So, the production quality of the album. Probably one of the most polarizing things about this, but for my own personal tastes, I don't feel like it hurts it at all. I totally get what they were going for, especially in retrospect. At the time, expecting a Journey album to sound like Departure or Escape was a mistake, because they were a band that was already establishing themselves as being like progressive in their views and stuff, and always wanting to change and further their sound as much as they keep a similar sound and vibe, especially with the riffs and the vocals and stuff. Every album is a different character to me, though, a different journey. So I don't think it hurts it at all. I love the 80s production, because I think it laid the way for so many other bands at this time. Remember, this is 1983, so it hasn't even gotten into like the real peak of the new wave and stuff there. Close, but bands like them, who are sort of hard rock / heavy metal, power pop kind of groups, combining all those things, that nobody else was doing what they were doing here. And like I said earlier in the video, apparently they were breaking all this new ground with having their own video game and all this other stuff related to video effects and stuff going on at the time. Really great, groundbreaking stuff. Really thank them for doing this album and, you know, breaking ground. You know, I love the production on it. Can't go wrong with Bob Ludwig. Some people hate it. They think it's too icy, too contrite, and just lifeless. I disagree. I think it has a new life in it that feels very alien to me. I don't know what it is about it. It's just otherworldly. So 5 out of 5 on the production. Alright, so next is the cohesion, the track cohesion. And this is where things are a little iffy here as far as cohesion, because you got a couple songs that don't fit in necessarily with like the futuristic-esque vibes here. Like, I guess like the ones I mentioned that have a sort of classic Journey feel, like Faithfully and Backtalk a little bit too. They just, those kind of stand out, but it's not in a bad way per se. It just kind of breaks away from the dystopian feels on this album. And I don't want to say that it hurts it. Just maybe I can sort of agree with some people where they're trying to get some of the same successes of songs like Open Arms and Lights, and then as far as Backtalk is concerned, stuff like Can Do and things like that, that are just kind of more upbeat rockers. I don't think it hurts it though. I would hate to say that this album shouldn't have those songs on it. I mean, to me it's a shame it doesn't have the other 2 songs that I mentioned on it already. It could have more. But does it hurt the flow of the album? No, not really. It's still a pretty cohesive listen. It doesn't like make me bored or anything throughout it. And I love the similarities through each song. None of them are really like in the same key or anything, so that's cool. Yeah, I guess I would give maybe 4.5 on the cohesion. Maybe knock like a 0.5 only because of the differences in the songs, like a couple different tracks. But I only want to knock it 0.5, not any more points than most fans would usually do, just because I really love it. I can't complain. I listen to this album quite frequently. So the audience that they were going for on the album seems to me to be like a new one. It seems like they were trying to bring their old fans into a new area because of the times changing and all that sort of thing, with the synth layers being more prominent and stuff. And from reading other reviews, I can tell that some fans weren't really huge on this direction, but I like it a lot. I mean, I obviously wasn't born yet in 1983, so I can only imagine what people actually thought of this sound when it was coming about. But I think they brought in a lot more fans, Like, they obviously had a lot more fans that were more into their, more straightforward rock kind of sound, like power pop kind of sound. But I think that this brought in more of the new wave crowd, and also more of like the heavy metal crowd, because it's just more flashy with the guitar playing, the riffs are heavier, and like I said, with the new wave crowd, they're just more keyboards and more like gated drums and spacey elements and textures like that they were not using up until this point. So the audience, it's a hard tie up on this. I guess maybe I'll give it a 4 because it was a detour in a little bit of a way, but it was in a groundbreaking way. Some people fell off, but to me, if I were around for this, I would have been totally on board, would have been totally blown away by all the tricks on this. The instrumental skills and content of the album, I mean, I just gotta say it's a 5 out of 5 right off the freaking bat, because everyone's playing throughout this album is just top notch throughout their career. It usually is with them. Like, they still just put out crazy instrumental work, and their live shows are just on point. They're just a band that really works hard at sounding good. And can't complain about any of the performances on here. I think the drums are probably one of the weirdest things on here, but it's not that I hate it. They just do some things that are very like offbeat at times, and the production tricks make them a little unusual, but for the vibe of the album, I think it really helps. And when you listen to these songs live, you get a different feel for them anyway. That's less like album oriented. So yeah, 5 on the instrumental skills, the lyrical content too. Like I love most of the lyrics of these songs. They really touch you, especially as a musician who works hard at making like emotional and powerful music. I really like it. Personal experience with the album, I kind of went into that a little bit in the beginning in the track by track. Like I knew Faithfully and Separate Ways, kind of in my teenage years, and then like I always felt guilty about not like really listening to this whole album and kind of just listening to the Journey Greatest Hits Volume 1 and 2 that like my grandparents had. And they had like the Essential Journey and stuff. And then when I started getting into their albums, I basically only listened to Escape and Departure first, and like didn't really know how vast their catalog was. Didn't even know that Steve wasn't the original frontman. And yeah, it's just good stuff. Good stuff, and I'm glad I got into it. Kind of didn't listen to the whole album until like I was probably about like 22 or 23 or something like that, and was like, just wow, this is so different for them, and kind of understood like where they were coming from. So yeah, I definitely have good personal experience with the album. I listened to it like twice before I did this review, and still don't get tired of it. I think the songs take me to that other plane just like they used to, and really can't complain. I love all the albums that they do, but this one sticks with me the most in the most unique ways. So yeah, and like I said, a couple of the songs are just tear-jerking for me. So any band that has managed to do that just make me kind of appreciate being alive and, you know, the beauty of life through their music. I just give them props for that. So yeah, 5 out of 5 on my personal experience, which most albums that's gonna be almost a given if I actually own it, but yeah, maybe some things will change, we'll see. So the overall rating of the album, let's see, 4.5 on cohesion, and then 4 on the audience. So maybe I can't really give it a perfect score, but I would definitely give it a 9 out of 10 instead of like a 9.5, just because losing a whole point on the audience of it, which to me isn't really like a big deal because it's not how I enjoy the album, but it's definitely important for like its relevancy and that sort of thing. So yeah, 9 out of 10, almost perfect. It just has a couple things that were very game changing about it, and you know, if you're a classic Journey fan, you might prefer stuff like Infinity, Departure, and Escape. So that totally don't blame you, not knocking anybody here. This is just my favorite one. We'll get into a little bit of the package here. I kind of have a shitty CD copy of it. I think this is an old one too, because it has like this black, you know, siding here, and I think it was something they stopped doing until like the mid '90s. I feel like feel like this album might be from the '80s. I'm not quite sure. I can look at the. I mean, all it says is copyright 1983 on the bottom here, so I feel like it might be an original pressing. Not sure. Mine's kind of shitty though. As soon as I bought this one offline, bam, the freaking thing broke. The little whatever you call them, the thing that holds it together here, the little tab, broke off. This one's starting to go too. As soon as I bought this and opened it up, it was just like, bink, done, broke. One of the things I hate about CDs, but you can always replace jewel cases, so can't complain. I got it super cheap. I love this booklet here. First, when you open it up, you think it's going to be like a poster because of how it folds open like this, which is really cool. But it really kind of resembles like vinyl liner notes to me. And I love, if I can get the glare to get off the screen here, I love how they did this. It's in like a digital kind of format reminiscent of their video game at the time. And they give you like a bit of the credits that you need to know here. You can definitely find more online, but yeah, some very interesting stuff if you get the chance to read that there. And then on the other side, this is what reminds me of like the vinyl liner notes, is they put all the album's lyrics on like a single panel like that, and you do get to see like who wrote every song and whatnot. And I guess I should mention that most of these songs are collaborations, either between John Cale and Neil Schon and Steve Perry all at the same time. But one of the biggest, most famous songs on the album, Faithfully, even though it's sung beautifully by Steve, is written only by John Cale, so that's an interesting thing. I thought it was like a whole band contribution, but yeah, that's his centerpiece on the album. Then, nothing really special or different about the back. It's the same thing as the back sleeve, just them skydiving. Apparently they had a good time doing that whole thing there. Got some of the track listing and information there on the bottom too. But yeah, the CD, nothing special, just a CBS Records CD. So many albums have that look to them. Just classic stuff though. Classic look. Alrighty, so that's my copy of Journey's Frontiers. And yeah, 9 out of 10. Let me know what you think about the band, about this album, about any albums that I review. Love to hear from people about their opinions on what I do. Any help, any criticism on my reviews would help, just starting off doing this. And really love doing these reviews and everything for everybody. I hope somebody gets something out of it. So once again, if you can support me in any way, that would help. Share the links around, subscribe, listen to the other bands I'm in, Green Ridge, Raoul and the Dukes. Definitely support Horror Punks USA. Until then, I've been Brandon Bailey. You've been my audience, and I will see you next time. Peace and love.